Hey everyone, I'm Ann Lewis. I'm the team lead for MacroBlitz. And in this presentation, we are going to discuss how to collect macroinvertebrates. As a result of watching this presentation, you will understand the purpose of collecting macroinvertebrates for MacroBlitz, understand MacroBlitz practices in collecting, know the jab and sweep method, know the turn and churn method. And I should say those terms are kind of unique to MacroBlitz. Understand how to hold macros in the tub to minimize stress. And then we'll conclude with looking at other methods of collecting. Let's start with the purpose of collecting, why we are asking you to go out and collect macros in the first place. And that is all driven by our study design question, which is what kinds of macroinvertebrates do you find when you churn and turn rocks in a stream or jab the vegetation and top layer of sediment with a net in a pond, wetland, or along a lakeshore? So essentially, what we're asking you to do is to go out, stick a net in the water, swish it around, poke it around some rocks, scoop it up. What do you see? You're going to take photos and upload those photos to iNaturalist. That is what MacroBlitz is all about. Because that is what we are about. That is what we are doing. We have practices that are unique to us, such as we are not asking you to go out and establish a permanent collection. You don't have to establish a reference collection. So you don't have to preserve, you don't have to store. Everything you do for MacroBlitz is going to be done right there on site in the field. We are not asking for a minimum sample size. And because we aren't asking for a minimum sample size, you can minimize site disturbance and site footprints. So you could just choose a few places to collect, and whether those places are representative of your site as a whole or unique, that's up to you. One of our practice is to minimize stress to the organisms, and we'll talk about how to do that towards the end. And we ask that you return your organisms to the water when you are finished, as long as that's allowed by the site manager. Not every site manager will allow you to do that. Okay, let's get into the nitty gritty of collecting. We'll start with an overview. And I should say that if you have not yet watched the presentation on Find Macroinvertebrates, go to that module in our Google Classroom and watch it because it will tell you where to collect in the water. You should also know that jab and sweep is a method used for lentic waters or slow waters, while turn and churn is used for lotic or fast waters. And lentic and lotic are covered in the Find Macroinvertebrates module if you're unfamiliar with those terms. All right, let's look at the jab and sweep method. Go ahead and start the video. So to collect macros with jab and sweep, the first thing you do is you're going to rinse out your tub, and then you'll put some water in the tub to hold the macros. With a big net, you'll jab along the bottom and through whatever vegetation is there, then sweep it up. And it's okay if you get a little bit of sediment in the bottom in the net. You'll put the contents of your net in the tub, and you'll probably have to turn your net inside out. You might have to brush or gently rinse your net to get everything off. With a small net, you'll reach as far as you can in the water and start at the base of the vegetation and jab your way up. You could also do that with a big net. Turn the net inside out, put your organisms into the tub. Pretty self-explanatory. Turn and churn, again, that's a process used with the lotic waters, the flowing waters. And team member Dalal Hanna is going to talk about how to turn and churn and collect macroinvertebrates. Take it away, Dalal.
This kind of branch in the water is like prime invert habitat. So I'm just gonna give it a good rub, allowing the current to have whatever comes downstream flow into it. And then I'm going to get to see what's living on this branch, and I'm sure there's a lot. So I just give it a nice rub so that anything that comes off of it goes into my net. At the same time, I can also rub the rocks that are around. They're also prime habitat. I can pick up some rocks off the bedrock, give them a good rub the sediments at the bottom of the stream, keeping my net right here so that it catches anything that comes off these rocks. And then I swoop my net up, and I got to make sure to swoop it up right into the current so that nothing comes out. Oh my goodness! Woo!
Obviously, turn and churn is an effective way to collect macros. You'll notice there's a little bit of rubbing in there too, but again, very self-explanatory. Let's talk about holding macros in the tub. You can see over here that our tub is in a very little bit of shade. This was a setup that we had on a really hot July day. And this was our monitoring site. So you can see there aren't a lot of trees. So we made a little bit of shade because we knew that as the organisms got hot, they would begin to get stressed. So in order to reduce the stress, we made what shade we could. We also had some vegetation in the tub, so be sure to add a rock or vegetation to provide cover for your macros. Again, we're here to minimize stress. And finally, when you're done, you will want to just empty your tub out. So it's pretty self explanatory, but I'll show you how I do it. Just gently put the tub back where you collected from, pour it out, rinse again if need be. If you have gear, like your nets, your cups, your petri dishes, you could also rinse those out. Let's look at some other methods of sampling now. You may be wondering if I already use a different method to collect macroinvertebrates. Perhaps you are part of a different program. What should you do? Our answer is continue to use your method. Add photographing and uploading to iNaturalist as part of your protocol at the end. That is it. You might be wondering, if you're not familiar with macroinvertebrate sampling, what those other methods might be. And this is a non exhaustive list: kick nets, Hester prendies, leaf packs, rock baskets, gravel trays, buckets, bucket cylinders. These are all other methods that, depending on your study design question, going back to what we talked about at the beginning, could be useful for your project. Thank you so much for watching. We hope that you learned something, and we invite you to join our Google Classroom to share comments, to ask questions, to share your experiences. If you are not yet part of our Google Classroom, go to macroblitz.org for information on how to join, and we would love to see you there. So, on behalf of Dalal and the rest of the MacroBlitz team, thank you and happy MacroBlitzing.